I'm always interested to see if I'm going to see any names that I recognize.
Yeah. Mm.
I've been having fun with like a new question, like, hey, have you ever heard like, Jordan or Sarah speak before? So I'll ask it again.
Yeah,
Oh,
no.
God. Oh,
Like
yeah.
one of the cool things is just like you see the people that are having impacts in the industry, but then you also like, see the people that have never heard of all these people. I mean, it's a cool thing. If you guys want a really
Mm.
good laugh, I went to a recruiting conference in Paris and it was all in French. I don't speak any French. I was using the Apple AirPods the entire time for live translation, which is amazing. And like, I think maybe like two people knew me, so not a single person had ever met me or even heard of me before. I'm like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, I didn't even know the AirPods could do that.
It is the new update with like the brand new AirPods. It's like
Right.
it is yeah, like I was able to catch about 95% of the speakers from stage.
Oh,
The
my
only
goodness.
time it got lost was when there was a bunch of back and forth between the audience and the speaker. And also
Yeah.
during lunch, it was just too much ambient noise to pick up anything.
Mm.
And
So you
during
You're
sat
lunch,
saying
again.
that.
yeah,
I
during
mean,
lunch, a few
you
people were nice
take
enough to say,
95% though, right? Like
"What'd you say?"
that's still in, you take 95% though. Like
Yeah, like
that's
I was able to
incredible.
like
Yeah.
sit there and like they were speaking French and I could hear to my ears in English.
Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
cool. So cool. So cool. I'm seeing some names that I recognize, Benjamin.
Oh,
Yeah.
all
Oh,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
good.
so
Yeah.
before we get started, out of
Mhm.
curiosity, have you guys ever heard Sarah or Jordan speak before? Drop a yes or a no in the chat. And also, Tim, you're on top of things. Like if you want to connect with other awesome recruiters, drop your LinkedIn profile. I see a yes in there. So no, no,
That's
no.
Brittany. Yeah, Brittany hears me speak twice a week, every week. She's
Christina is in California, 6 a.m. and on top of this.
love that.
Nice.
So I actually did some digging. Hello, Iowa. Actually, my wife is from Iowa. I did some digging and I have asked a few really good retained search professionals, like who's some of the best people in the training space? And I've gotten over and over again, Jordan, Sarah, and you guys. You guys are just some of the best. So excited to have you guys back. If you want
Thank
to
you
know
for having me.
anything about retained search, make sure to like load up the Q&A, but they're going to talk about how they're using AI with it. So guys, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so
Amazing.
much.
Thank you.
I was going to start by saying good afternoon, everyone, but actually, it's probably morning for most of you,
Generally
afternoon for me
speaking.
and Sarah in the UK. Firstly, Ben, thank you so much for inviting us along again. It's always an absolute pleasure to talk anything that you wonderfully put together. And I know everybody here today kind of really appreciates all of the work that you do. For those of you that don't know us, my name is Jordan Taylor, retained search coach, and I'm joined by my colleague Sarah, who runs everything digital for our business. And together we run Retrain Search, enabling recruiters in over 30 countries to secure their work on a retained basis. And today we're here to show you how you can use AI to supercharge your BD efforts and, importantly, secure forecastable revenue in your direct hire business in 2026. So, I wanted to start here because we wrote a newsletter on this recently. And that is that contingent direct hire recruiters such as Robert Half, Hayes, Page Group are all reporting year on year declines in both fees and in profits. Meanwhile, retained search firms like Korn Ferry, Heidrick and Struggles are posting double digit revenue growth on the other hand. The divergence is stark, right? Retained search firms are thriving. And why is that though? Right? Well, retained search sits at the kind of high touch, high volume end of the spectrum. Right? Clients aren't just paying for CVs, they're buying market intelligence, structured assessment, stakeholder management, advisory. These elements are really hard to commoditize, right? And they deliver real strategic impact at both board and leadership level because the value is strategic. The model commands commitment, exclusivity, upfront fees, trusted partnership, and that shields it from pure price competition and that kind of transactional churn. And that's kind of the reason why contingent is struggling, right? Because it's exposed on both fronts. Clients, many now expect kind of low cost, rapid resume delivery. Technology, AI sourcing tools, internal talent platforms, direct outreach, it's swallowing the transactional resume pushing end of the market, where the proposition is simply who can find the candidate fastest. Algorithms, job boards, internal recruiters can often do it quicker, they can do it cheaper, and that leaves contingent firms fighting over shrinking margins. So I'm really glad that you've all joined us today because I'm hopeful this could start to transform your 2026. Now, I know what some of you are thinking though. AI, that sounds complicated, maybe even a little bit scary, and I get it. Technology can feel overwhelming when you're spinning so many plates already, but here's the truth. AI is not here to replace you. It is here to make your life easier, to make it simpler and help you win more business faster. And our aim today, we've got three, is to inspire you, to show you what is possible when you bring AI into your BD strategy, to demystify the process so it feels simple, practical, and approachable, not intimidating. And I want to give you actionable steps along with Sarah so you leave here today with things that you can actually try and implement in your business right away. This is not about theory, it's about showing you what's working right now so that you can take real action.
Exactly. So I'll be doing the AI part, George, if that's all right.
I'm not the man for that. We found that out
Okay.
before. Yeah.
So yeah, just a bit of info on what we're going to be covering on the AI side of things today. So first of all, we're going to look at company discovery. So how can we find prospects using AI? Then we're going to move on to deep research. So taking one of those companies and identifying specific retained search buying triggers. Next up is market intelligence. So we're going to be looking at how we can repurpose conversations that we're already having to then create personalized outreach. Finally, we've got prioritization. So we're going to look at who should we be targeting. And as George said, my absolute aim for today is to ensure that you have things that you can go and implement straight away.
Absolutely. Okay, so company research, something that I see and hear all the time when I speak to recruiters about business development is this. They've got a list of maybe 10, 15 companies on that BD list. And those companies are often well researched, they're well known, they're highly targeted. And on the surface, that feels sensible. But the problem is it massively limits opportunity. If those 10 or 15 companies aren't hiring, if they're not feeling pressure, already have supplies in place, often BD pipelines, they just stall. What actually drives consistent retained wins is breadth with intelligence, not a tiny list with hope attached. And this is where company research done properly changes the game because AI allows you to widen the top of that funnel dramatically, right? Instead of 10 companies, you can identify 50, 100, sometimes more, all with relevant hiring signals. And importantly, you're not guessing, you're filtering companies based on size, growth, hiring behavior, market complexity, and the buying triggers that we'll come on to talk about. So you end up with a much broader list, but still highly relevant. And that gives you optionality. You're no longer emotionally attached to just a handful of accounts. You're in a position where you can focus your energy on the companies that are most likely to buy retained right now. And that's what makes BD feel predictable instead of painful.
Exactly. So, I will show you this in action. So for this research, I'm going to use Perplexity for my tool. You can use ChatGPT or whatever you've got, but I'm really liking Perplexity because it accesses the web and cites real-time sources, which makes it brilliant for doing any sort of research. And I will say the free version is really good as well. For the purposes of this demo, I am going to use the niche of VP and C-level engineering leadership for fintech and B2B SaaS companies based in London. But obviously, if you were using these prompts, and don't worry, we will share you the prompts, you would adapt this to your niche. So I've just copied this and I'm just going to pop this in. And as you can see, it started to already look at different sources of information. And we can see it's got LinkedIn, FinTech Talent, some job boards have come up. And we can go and have a look at those websites and see what it's citing if we want to verify the information. And it's bringing in the companies now as well. So we've asked it to identify 10 companies based in London that we may have already have some connection of, they fit with our niche. I've asked it to focus on Series B to Series C stage, company size of around 100 to 400 employees, and they hire VP engineering, CTO, head of engineering roles. And I've asked it to give me this information for all 10 companies. So it's given me a few different ones here. And what we can see is it's bringing in the stage, so it's Series B. This one's a little bit out of scope, so just under 100 employees. Likely connection points, regularly surfaces in UK and fintech roundups. Investors and execs often overlap with broader fintech scenes where you may already know founders and early engineering leaders, because I've already given it context to what we've done previously. And it's also giving us here as well, like why these would make a strong retained prospect as well. So here for this one, Monument, it says, as they move beyond Series B toward further commercialization, expect mandates for CTO upgrades, VP platform, engineering leadership to handle core banking and integrations. And it's basing this all on information that it's been able to find. So if I was to do this for 10 companies and this level of research, like manually, it would easily take me a few hours to do.
Yeah.
If we take in like the stalking on LinkedIn, the searching on Google, even just trying to figure out who to target and whether or not the company is relevant as well. And as you can see, this took minutes, seconds, really. And also just one thing to really drive home with this is the more context you give it, the better the results as well. So if I had told it, I've attended certain fintech events or I've placed people at particular companies, or even like I have connections at certain VC firms, it would prioritize the companies with those connections. And it just shows that your context like makes it smarter, it makes the output smarter.
Mm.
So
I used to spend hours doing that type of stuff,
yeah, didn't
searching
know.
like news articles and stuff like that. It just makes it so much
Exactly.
easier, doesn't it? It does. It does. Okay, so deep research and what you're looking at here in this graphic are the buying triggers that, from my experience and our members' experience, and we've done a lot of this when it comes to retained search, these are the buying triggers that most commonly lead to retained. Right now, these are situations where a business isn't just hiring, they're looking typically to reduce risk. They're not looking to just fill a role. And that distinction really matters. Now, at the center of the graphic is retained search, right? And around it are the conditions that make retained the logical decision, not just a nice to have. So let's just walk through a few of them, right? Senior hires, probably the one we're most familiar with, right? When a role has that real commercial impact, the cost of getting it wrong is high. But critical hires too, and urgent hires where time, quality, or both are under pressure. Aged requirements, roles that just have been open for far too long, often because the market's tighter than expected and internal efforts or contingent efforts have fallen down. Niche skill sets or difficult locations where traditional contingent approaches, as I say, just don't deliver consistent results. Confidential hires where discretion matters, job ads just aren't an option. Multiple vacancies, unknown markets, negative perceptions, or scenarios where a client needs guidance, not just resumes. The key point is this: when one or more of these triggers are present, clients are usually primed to buy. And your job in BD is to recognize these signals. right? To recognize the smoke that's coming from the fire and lead the conversations from there. And this is where deep research becomes incredibly valuable because AI can help you identify which of these triggers are most likely in play for a specific business based on hiring patterns, market movement, growth signals, role complexity, instead of just guessing who might be open to retained. You're focusing on organizations where retained actually makes sense. And that changes the conversation from can we work together to how should we structure this properly and what should the solution look like? And that's the power of understanding these buying triggers. And it's what sets retained first recruiters apart from most of the competition.
Exactly. So, I am going to take one of the companies that has come up in our previous search. Let's take Pollinate. And then what I'm going to do is do some deep research on this one specific company. So again, I'm just going to get my prompt. And what we're asking it to do is to really look at those triggers and see if it can highlight any of these that might be relevant based on the research it can find. So I've popped in all the triggers that Jordan's just gone through that could possibly indicate that they may need retained solutions. I've asked it to again give us some information on the company, look at which triggers apply best to them. If it can, identify some key decision makers, look at recent signals, so funding rounds, expansions, hiring patterns, any sort of marketing news that we can use to kind of see if, a retained solution would be something that would be relevant to the business. And then I've asked it to give me some conversation hooks as well. So based on the research that it's given us, give us some ideas of how best to use this information when we're connecting with these businesses. So it's gone ahead and given me more information on the company. It's gone in more into detail on the stage. So it says Series C funding, the organizational shape as well. So they're expanded into London, but they've also got a North American office in Charlotte. The buy-in triggers, so it's highlighted that the niche skill set is strong, and that's because they build a bank-grade merchant acquiring an SME banking platform, integrating with complex regulated bank legacy systems. Also, the retained angle, so VP level engineering platform leaders who understand acquiring. So there's some complex niche skill sets that they need there. It goes into, senior hires, critical hires are strong as well, what the retained angle is here. Then it starts to look at other things which aren't as relevant, but we're still getting some sort of intel here on geography, whether or not it's urgent, is there multiple vacancies? And then it's telling us the ones that it couldn't find any information on. So it's not been able to find any negative perception for the business in online. It's given us a priority order of triggers. It has not been able to find, it's found the CEO, but it hasn't been able to find other people, but it's given us some sources and kind of given us some indication of what the organizational structure might look like. Then we've gone on to the recent signal. So we've got all the information on the funding and the expansion, hiring patterns, and finally the conversation hooks as well. So it's
It just take hours, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To do this.
Yeah, exactly. Even just to get half of this information would take you an hour at least. So yeah, and now we're getting a sense of exactly why this company would value a strategic partnership over, a general supplier as well. And the information we're getting is, it's not like, oh, this is a tech company and they probably hire some engineers. Like this is, the specific triggers that they have, why retain search makes sense. here's who to talk to, here's how to position the conversation as
And
well.
in such a busy market, it's so important that you demonstrate value as early as you can in that approach, right? And
Mm.
all of that insight makes it so much easier to do that. So we've seen now how AI can do kind of the heavy lifting when it comes to market intelligence. But I suppose following on from kind of what I've just said, the real value is what do you then do with that information? And winning retained isn't just about how much you know, it's about how quickly you can demonstrate that understanding to the client. And personalized outreach, as I've just mentioned, is exactly where that happens. And when I say personalized, I don't mean, hi, Sarah, I love your website. I'm talking kind of showing them right from the first message that we understand their market, that we understand their pressures, what's likely sitting on their desk right now, what's keeping them awake at night. And that is where AI becomes incredibly powerful because you can take the research, the company context, the sector trends, the growth signals, and you can then ask AI to help you turn that into relevant human sounding outreach messages. One that highlights insight, not just information. The mistakes that a lot of recruiters make, though, is thinking that personalization has to equal more time. And in reality, like it just doesn't. AI lets you personalize smarter, not slower. You're not starting from a blank page every time. You're not copy and pasting generic templates either. You're using AI to bridge the gap between insight and impact. And the result is outreach that genuinely stands out, that demonstrates value really early in the conversation. But importantly, crucially, it does all of that without reducing your capacity. And that's how you scale quickly, scale quality as well, not just volume.
Exactly. So I will show you what this looks like. So again, I'm just going to take
And I
my,
saw someone in the chat saying, "Will you be sharing these prompts?"
oh,
Yes, all of the prompts will be
absolutely.
shared. Will be shared with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share all of these prompts after, because I appreciate there's a lot of information that we're going through here, but we wanted to make sure that we packed as much of the actual doing in as possible. So, what I have asked it in the prompt is to, based on the research above that you've just given us, please craft a personalized outreach message for this prospect. I've given it the objective of the outreach. Again, I've just reiterated my positioning, the outreach approach that I want. So based on the retained search triggers, and then I've asked it to reference something specific about the company. We don't want anything generic. We really want it to look like we've done our homework on this specific company. I've asked it to keep it under 80 words as well, keep it short and punchy. So let's pop that in and see what it gives us. So again, it was just looking at the research that it done, and it's the message it's given us is congrats on the recent Series C and the push into North America and marketplace expansion, scaling an Azure native bank grade acquiring platform. So yeah, that sounds good. And then it's given a bit of a thing about what we do. Would it be useful to compare how peers are structuring senior engineering leadership for similar global rollouts? So it's a great
Nice.
starting point, isn't it? I mean, I would then take this and ensure it reads in my tone and obviously make sure all the facts are correct before finding the best person to send it to. But by doing this over a generic approach, you're really demonstrating that you understand their world as well. And you're
Mm.
showing value before asking for anything as
You're
well.
all right though. Please, guys, if you're going to use AI, sense check it before you send
Yeah.
it. I'm sick. I've got one company at the moment that on a weekly basis invite me to the next women in business leaders
Sorry.
lunch. So yeah, they're not doing the research on their
Yeah,
own.
you can actually ask Perplexity to like fact check things. Obviously, you've got all the sources, but I would just go and do your own due diligence as well because it's already saved you so much time, but
Yeah.
it's always wise
Yeah.
to check.
No, that's so good, sir. It really is. I suppose one of the other things that we found, and me, you were talking about this over coffee the other day, is that you can actually use so much of the information staring right at you in the
Mm.
face to kind of personalize outreach. And we do a lot of this, don't we? Kind of using call transcripts and stuff. Why don't you show them kind of how we do that as well?
Yes. Okay. So we use conversations that we have had with clients and prospects to tailor our outreach as well. And as George said, we do this by analyzing transcripts from these calls. So for this demo, I am just using some dummy data, but you would input your actual transcripts, obviously redact the confidential information. You can put key quotes in there if you don't have the whole transcript, or even just your notes on the meeting. But if I just press go on this and we have a look at the prompt. So what I've asked it to do is identify recurring themes and pain points within the transcript. So what AI is really good at is looking at patterns. So that's why we want to give it multiple transcripts as well, because we want it to see what challenges are coming up most often. Then we've asked it to quantify how often each of these challenges, these themes appear, and again, create conversation starter templates based on real market insights that we have gained ourselves. So we're having these conversations anyway, like we may as well use them.
Mm.
So we've got the info from the transcripts in here, and then I've asked it to analyze and give me the themes, the patterns, the positioning for retained search as well, which is really important, and those templates. So let's see what it has given me here. So the themes, it's saying leadership quality versus title. Call 2 said accidental managers, candidates wanting direct to VP titles without a track record. Bad remote hires, interview great, but couldn't architect at the level we needed. Then it's gone on to the trends and the patterns. So remote and distributed leadership is now a hard requirement, not a nice to have. Multiple calls mention remote assessment and multi-region teams. Market commentary shows most engineering orgs are now multi-location and time zone distributed. The subtle challenge is evaluating distributed leadership skill, not just comfortable with Zoom. It's given me
And all
some,
this and all this stuff is like just staring you all right in
yeah,
the face. Like you're having the conversations. Just so many people just aren't using
no,
the
exactly.
intelligence from it.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's given us the position as well. So how can we, how does this differ to retain versus contingent? So, leadership quality versus title, which we talked about. Contingent incentives push volume, retain lets you invest in assessment design, the leadership scorecards, the structure, stakeholder alignment. Complex remote distributed leadership assessment, again, retained lets you build a custom assessment flow. And then finally, we've got the conversation starter templates again. So it's gone through like how we can talk about this sort of stuff. So when I've asked engineering leaders in your space, what's hardest at the moment, around 60% pointed to the same issue, assessing true technical depth and multi-region leadership capability over Zoom. I'd be interested to hear how you're approaching that challenge internally. And as you've said to me before, Jordan, like, people tend to have the same problems, don't they?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. They might be nuanced slightly, but typically I find in
mm,
most markets, companies are facing the same hiring challenges, the same
yeah,
pressures, right? It's consistent, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. But then what we can do is take both of those things as well. So we've done our in-depth research on the company. We've got our market intelligence from conversations that we're having with prospects and clients in the market. And now we can ask it to create some outreach that combines both of these themes.
Mm.
So again, I've asked it to demonstrate the patterns like we can see across the market, um, and given it some ideas on the format. So 80 words maximum. So let's see what it does when we ask it to do that. So the message it's given me is your Series C expansion, merchant platform and work with tier one banks puts you right in the small group of fintechs where engineering leadership is both deeply payment specific and highly visible to bank partners. Then it talks about the conversations that we've had. around 80% told me their hardest hires are leaders who've scaled 30 to 80 person multi-regional teams. Would it be useful to compare how peers are structuring VP level engineering searches for that profile? And again, it's given me the sources for that as well.
Mm.
So straight away, it's positioning you as someone who sees what others do not. You're connecting the dots. It's helping you connect those dots. Um,
Yeah, I think it demonstrates very early, doesn't it, that you can add real value, that you
yeah,
understand their world, that you're
exactly.
solving this challenge for others, rather than that generic outreach. And listen, these hiring managers, they're hit by like 20, 30 approaches a day.
I
Like
know.
we've got to stand out. Um,
Yeah.
so I thought it might just be worth mentioning for any of you that don't use any sort of note taker. I'm just thinking in terms of
Mm,
call transcripts, it's worth
yeah.
noting we are totally tech agnostic in that we're not
Yeah.
paid, we don't have partnerships with anyone. We're big fans of Fathom. We use Fathom as our note taker.
The free version's great as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
But lots of our members are using Quill is one.
Mm,
MetaView works really well. So there are several out there. Some of the free ones are great, even not, they're relatively inexpensive, aren't they?
yeah.
So if you're not transcribing your calls, I would start doing that
Yeah.
straight away. Okay, so I see all the time though that people make BD just so much harder than it needs to be, right? They end up chasing completely new markets that they don't really understand, or going after big name logos where there's no relationship at all, or targeting stakeholders who've never even heard of them. And if that sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. But here's the reality: it's that the easiest path to retain search and those conversations, it's usually already sitting inside your existing network. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just kind of need to focus on it a little bit. And that's
Mm,
why I wanted to show you what we call the priority pyramid. It's just a simple framework, really, that helps you focus your BD efforts in the areas where you're most likely to get traction and results. So here's how it works, right? Tier one is existing clients. They are your highest ROI opportunities. They typically trust you. You've delivered for them before, and the cost of sale is about as low as it's ever going to get. Tier two are your existing relationships. Now, these might be people you've met before, but it didn't turn into work at the time. Trust me, the second meetings I find are always easier than the first ones. Tier three network extensions, their client referrals, their portfolio companies, introductions, warm introductions from people you already know. That's the warmest way to meet someone new. And then you've got tier four. They are your strategic dreams, right? They're the
mm,
big name clients that you'd love to work with. They do take more time, they take more effort, but often by the time you get there, you've built momentum, you've got case studies, and you've built confidence from being retained from the first three tiers. The principle here is really quite simple, right? Basically, work your way up the effort ladder, starting with the relationships, not with the cold prospects. Here's an important reality check. Roughly 1 in 3 meetings will convert into a retained search. The other two aren't dead leads, though, right? They then become warm prospects. And if you're doing this properly, they're the people that you'll revisit again and again and convert at a later date.
exactly. So, in practice, let's see how that works for obviously using a good old prompt. So, I've created a prompt with the priority pyramid framework. I'm just going to pop it in here. It scores on the four categories that we talked about, but the most important one is this relationship and access, which I'll go through in more detail. Because this determines what tier they actually fit in. And then we've got retained search fit, commercial factors, and market position that it also looks at. And again, I've said it before, but the more context you can give it, if you've spoken to a decision maker previously, or maybe they've replied to one LinkedIn message, you've got mutual connections, the better the results. So in this prompt, I've put my relationship context in here. So I've said we've met at an event 8 months ago. I spoke to the VP of engineering briefly. He has replied once to a LinkedIn. It was a no, not right now. we're connected on LinkedIn. We have some mutual connections. We haven't ever placed at this company before, but we have placed at similar companies, and I've given the info on like where I've placed at previous companies before. Any other context that I feel it needs as well. So I've added, it's announced US expansion and hired a new CPO recently. I've seen these job posts as well. So if I hit go on this, it will start reviewing the business and seeing what priority they are essentially. So it's working out the score for each of these things. So first of all, it's saying 33 out of 40 for the relationship and access. So likes the fact that we've met previously at an event, and not so great that we're not getting much traction on LinkedIn. Um, Retain search fits is out of 30 points, and it's got 30 out of 30. So it's told us the buying triggers, the complexity of the organization, which would probably warrant a retained solution. Then it's gone into the commercial factors. So they're well funded, they're a $50 million Series C. Hiring potential, we've got 7 out of 10 for volume hiring. So it knows there's 2 engineering managers, there's an expansion in the US. But realistically, we're not going over 5 hires in the year at this stage. And then the market position as well. So how do they fit within your niche, and what's the competitive landscape? And then the total score is 89 out of 100, which means that it's pretty good out of 100. 89 is pretty good. It's now told us as well, like what tier they're in. So it's saying here they are tier 2 by relationship, but they are tier 1 level priority by score because of so it's a really top tier 2. And then it's given us some recommendations of action that we can take. So this week it's saying re-engage directly with the VP of engineering you met, reference the conversation that you had at the event, use the combined outreach angle you've already developed. It's also saying like try and leverage those mutual connections that you've got. And it's also given us some red flags and some opportunity enhancers as well. And you can tailor this prompt to what your priorities are as well. So to what matters most to you. And as always with AI, the more context you give, the better it prioritizes your pipeline.
So I'm sorry to ask you questions as we go through, but I just thought it's relevant. Someone's just asked in the chat, can you use the same prompts on ChatGPT, like word for word?
Oh, yeah, you can. It's not, I would probably just add one reference, which is like make sure that you reference or cite sources. It does most of the time, but it's good to give it that extra nudge. But yeah, it'd be absolutely fine. I'm just finding that Perplexity gives me, even the free version gives me much better sources. It seems to be able to search on LinkedIn, which ChatGPT at this point struggles with. So I would play around, but yeah, we've done this a couple of times, like sessions on AI and BD, and up until recently, we were doing stuff with ChatGPT, weren't we?
Yeah, yeah, we were.
All good. Yeah.
Nice, really good, Sarah.
I'll hand it back over to you. Actually, just want to recap what we've done. So we've talked about how we can discover companies within our existing market. We've then done a deep dive on research into one specific company.
Mhm.
Then we've gone and used the market intelligence that we're collating anyway by doing our role to personalize some outreach to the decision makers. And finally, how do we prioritize who to go after next? And I think it's always good just to, as a reminder, to just say AI isn't replacing you. AI is just doing the grunt work. It's doing the research, the analysis, the pattern spotting, so you can focus on what AI can't do. It can't build relationships. It can't have those strategic conversations. It can't be a trusted advisor to someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now on to the fun bit, retained.
Oh, yes.
Listen, we've talked a lot about AI market intelligence, business development, and all of that's great because, as we've discussed, AI can absolutely help you in more retained conversations. But here's the uncomfortable question. If a client says yes tomorrow, are you ready? If you get into that pitch conversation, can you pitch it? If you win the retainer, can you deliver it properly? Are you set up to do it? Because selling retained is one thing and delivering it consistently is something else entirely. It starts with the basics, right? Do you have the right materials? Clear terms of business for retained. A retained deck that sets expectation, a delivery process that protects you, the candidate, and the outcome. Because retained work exposes weaknesses very, very quickly. For example, what do you do if the client's interview process is poor and then it starts putting good candidates off? What happens if a key decision maker goes on leave halfway through the process and then suddenly that momentum just disappears? Or you send the best candidate on the planet and the client says, great, yeah, we just want to see a few more. These things still happen. Or they get distracted by a spec resume, yeah, like an NPC from another agency that probably doesn't even exist. Or internal candidate suddenly appears who may have well been there all along. And then you finally get to offer stage and they lowball it, believing the candidate should feel lucky to be in the process. Or HR steps in and changes the goalpost and makes the process 10 times harder than it needs to be. None of these things are unusual. They're exactly what retained recruiters deal with every day too. And the retained process can manage them if we know how. And that's the difference. Do you have a process that anticipates them or one that reacts emotionally when they happen? Because retained search only works when you control the process, when you set expectations early and you lead the client through decisions that they're not always comfortable in making. So yes, AI can help you open more doors, but retained success comes from what happens after that door is open. And these wins are designed to just show you that it's possible. These are all people that are winning in the first couple of weeks of this year, right? And I want to reassure you that almost all of our members started exactly where you are today. They started watching a session like this, normally, primarily, if not all contingent, and now they're flying with retained. And if you have ambition to do this in 2026, then I want you to know you absolutely can. So are you retained ready? Well, to help you answer that question, we've got something for you. If you scan the QR code on the screen now, that's going to give you access to a free strategy session. I've allocated time over the next week or two to get through this with you and to help you understand where you're at on that journey. There are two pathways, either of which, we'll take on the call, right? Some of you might be brand new to retained, and I'm going to take you through a retained readiness review. That session is going to review your current business model, your current deal structure. We're going to identify what's missing across the process, positioning, confidence, pricing, and proof. And we're going to map out exactly what you need to do next for you to start selling retained with confidence. On the other hand, some of you may have already been doing some retained work. You might have some experience already, but want more consistency, in which case we'll go through more of a retained search health check. That session is designed to diagnose why your retained revenue fluctuates at the moment, pinpoint where deals stall, leak, downgrade. We'll sharpen your pricing and positioning. We'll review how effectively you're using AI in sales today, and we'll provide some guidance on how to build a tailored strategy to stabilize everything. Yeah, to make fees consistent, fill rates consistent, and importantly, completion of projects. Now, spaces are limited. There's only so much capacity in my diary, and I don't want you to miss out. So please, any of you that are interested, click that QR code now and secure your place. Questions? We've got time left. I think, Ben, you mentioned we may be have till about 1:15, so we might have 30 minutes or so left. We would be delighted to answer any questions that you might have, be it AI or retained.
So if you put a question in there earlier, if you could in the chat earlier, could you move it to the question and answer area to make it easier for me? So first question I have is, my goal in 2026 is to master retained search. Last year I was focusing on fractional recruiting. Had helped me get consistently monthly revenue. Any thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. Retained search is one way you're going to generate forecastable revenue, right? Yes, fractional recruiting, and I'm assuming by fractional, Tim, you mean you're engaged on almost like a contract with a firm to act as their internal recruiter, or maybe you're doing temp contract recruitment. They both generate forecastable revenue, which is great, as does retained. Yeah, I'd expect fill rates on a retained basis to move from, on average, I see 20-30% as an average on a contingent basis. Fill rates move to, if you're doing it properly, I would say at least 95%. And you can forecast that revenue, which, yes, makes it easier to grow. It makes it easier to scale, makes it easier for you to make hiring decisions for your own business. But as someone who's been a contingent recruiter for a long time and transitioned to retained, trust me, Tim, it makes you sleep a lot easier at night too. Yeah.
All right. What's the difference between engaged and retained?
Yeah, so a lot of people, I could talk for hours about this, Ben. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm a laugh to go for a pint with at the pub, right? So I see a lot of people using an engaged model, right? And typically engaged search is built on a smaller deposit, right? Maybe a couple of $1,000s on commencement, and the rest of the fee is on placement. I would rather that than contingent, right? In a way, right? Of course, I would rather the customer has some skin in the game. The problem I see with engaged search is often recruiters are left in a really, really difficult gray space, kind of in the middle. And what I mean is they've lost the benefit of contingent. And there aren't many, right? In my opinion, the main benefit of contingent, though, is that you can walk away too when they go and get stuff. Yeah, you're working on a really difficult mandate, something easier that you think you can fill quicker, drops on the desk, and you've got no commitment to that client. You can move over here straight away. You lose the benefit of contingent. And all of a sudden, you're now tied to the client too, because they've given you some money, right? You've got financial commitment. The problem is, what I often see recruiters do then is they over-deliver, right? Let's say we're working with a firm looking for their new VP sales, and we've got a couple of $1,000s off them at the beginning. If we're 3 or 4 weeks into that search and another agency speculatively sends the profile of the perfect candidate to that client, they are going to forgo that $2,000 to hire the right person. So people over-deliver because they think they're building on really solid foundations, only to see it kind of fall away at times. So that's the difference. Retained, on the other hand, is proper financial commitment. So typically, best practice is we split the fee into thirds. The first third of the fee is payable on commencement. The second third of the fee is payable on a jointly agreed shortlist with the client. And then the balance of the fee is due on placement. True financial commitment, allowing you to apply a true search process that's thorough, rigorous, and delivers the success rates in terms of hiring results that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Sweet. Emily, I'm more than happy to discuss that. As I said, I could talk about it for hours. So scan that QR code, and I'm more than happy to go through it with you in a bit more depth if it would help.
Why Series B and C and not A?
I think it was just an example, wasn't it, Sarah?
Yeah, I think it's just an example. You can use anything. I just use that as a demo, really. And I've noted it sometimes when I was doing some tests, it would give me some Series A and say, like, I can't find things in Series B or C. So, you can do Series A if you want.
Somebody says, I started retained search last year and I love it. Any tips on the critical element to include in my pitch deck?
What a really unique name as well, Ben. Never anonymous.
Shut
up.
You would be an absolute joy to go to the pub with.
Anonymous. I don't know why.
Sorry, I shouldn't joke. So I'm glad that you're loving it. I did too. And it's worth saying, right? It's not for everybody, right? Like some recruiters that I speak to, they love the chaos of contingent. I don't know why. I hated it. But some people love it. They like the idea that when they go and get stuff, they can bail out, and they should keep doing that. If that's what they want to do and they don't want to commit, don't do retained, right? But those of you that want to provide a proper service, that build partnership and relationship and want to deliver great results for customers, they're the ones that do best with it. Critical elements to include in the pitch deck. Yes, the two areas, and you know, again, I can't kind of give everything in just a couple of minutes, but the two main areas I would say is, firstly, I always kind of in the pitch give the customer an idea of all of the ways in which we work depending on the circumstance. What I want the customer to know is I'm not trying to sell you retained because I want money up front. The only reason we're having this conversation is because I've carried out a thorough diagnostic with you at the front end. I understand your challenges. I understand the pains. I understand what you're trying to achieve. And when we have customers with that situation, this is the way we solve that problem. Right. So, I mean, to give you a bit of the word track, that might sound something like this. We work with clients in different ways depending on the circumstance. For easy to fill everyday hires, we provide a contingent service. You'll be familiar with that. No win, no fee. Often it's in competition with other suppliers. It can work relatively well for lower level, more junior hires. When things start to get more difficult, whether it's niche, critical, challenging, confidential, senior, whatever the reason may be, when it starts to get more difficult, we always apply a retained methodology, and that's our headhunting service. And for clients of ours who are experiencing rapid periods of growth or have kind of ongoing recruitment needs, we actually offer economies of scale for bigger projects and multi-hires, but we still apply that rigorous and thorough process. That's the first thing, right? Lead with the circumstance and give them the different ways you solve the problems depending on that circumstance. The second thing is you have to articulate the solution. There are so many recruiters out there working on a retained basis and doing the same stuff they do contingently with a bit more focus. It's not enough. You have to be able to articulate what the difference is between the two processes. So they're the two main things I would say. Make sure they're in there.
Somebody said, how difficult is it to move from contingent search to retained? What challenges do recruiters have during that transition, and how quickly do they move to fully retained?
Yeah, nice. Great question. So it isn't easy to move from contingent to retained, but it's absolutely possible. The challenge that I found, because as I say, I was a contingent recruiter before I met Louise, our founder, and she taught me how to do this, is you only know what you know, right? And most of us, not all of us, but most of us recruiters that are working in direct hire have come up through the same kind of path, which is working in that big contingent firm or even a small firm surrounded by contingent recruiters, throwing CVs, working on 14, 15 vacancies at any given time to spread the risk. And because we only know what we know, we only know what we see, we just don't have the mindset, the knowledge, and the confidence to go and articulate it as a solution. The great thing that I found is it can be taught. I was a bang average contingent recruiter until I got taught how to do this properly and went and did really, really well with it. So if I can be taught how to do it, other contingent recruiters can, and we've now trained over 2,000 organizations how to do the same thing. So it is absolutely possible. And how quickly do they go fully retained? It totally depends. It normally on personality, I find. Some people that we train, 2 weeks in, they go in, I've started to watch the videos and I think I kind of started, I'm just going to start pitching it and see what happens. And they win really quickly. And some people say, I'm very thorough. My wife would be one of these people. She would go through the course in its entirety, watch every video, learn how to do it, go and pitch once and see what happened. 1-1, deliver it in its entirety, make sure that's right. And then once she's seen the full process through, would say, now I'm going to go and do it more. So it depends kind of on personality, I find.
Does retained only work for senior leadership roles, or could it focus on other levels?
It's one of the biggest myths and misconceptions that I see. I think that message has been pushed down from big search firms for years to stop us thinking we can compete. I find that it works for all levels of role, right? It doesn't work for every role. Sometimes it isn't necessary, right? Louise says you don't need to use a sledgehammer to crack a wall up. right? And sometimes it's a straightforward hire. They don't need a superstar. They just need someone that can do the job. There's a deep talent pool. Contingent works fine, no problem. But whenever I find it gets more difficult, right? Normally what that means is as recruiters, we need to apply more time, more resource, more rigor, more effort to make sure we see the result for the customer. And the problem we have is commercially, it doesn't make sense for us to do that when we're effectively working for free. So retained is a pricing mechanism that allows us to do what's needed and subsequently allows the customer to see results, right? So one of those reasons it can be more difficult is yes, because it's senior. Fine, no problem. But it can be because it's really technical. It can be that it's a straightforward hire, but it's in the middle of nowhere and nobody wants to travel, right? Like there are so many reasons. So it's for all levels of role. I've worked on 25K in the UK. What's that? Probably more like $40,000, $50,000 hires on a retained basis. And I've worked on basic salaries of near $1 million on a retained basis and everything in between.
Somebody said, I'm focused on BD for a team of recruiters. What are the top 3 bits of information a recruiter needs in the handover meeting?
So if I understand this right, what they're asking is that they do the BD, they win the mandate, and then they pass it over to delivery. Is what
That's what I'm reading too.
Oh, that petrifies me. They need a lot more than 3 bits of information. Like a proper briefing meeting for me should take probably a minimum of an hour, really. And we need every stakeholder involved in that search present on that brief. If they're not, I can't start the search, right? Otherwise, what happens is you get 3 weeks into the search, you go making great progress, and then Steve, who should have been on the call but wasn't, says, "Well, why are we looking in California? We need them in New York." Right? So for me, as a bare minimum, ideally, I would like the recruiters on the briefing call. So they get all of the context, they understand the culture, and they also see kind of how the stakeholders interact. As a bare minimum, I would record that call and I would have them sit and watch all of it before they start work.
How do you pitch current clients on retained if you're already in the process of searches on a contingent contract?
Nice. I love that question. So, Sarah, you clearly did an amazing job of the AI piece because everyone's
and I was going to say
ready to go. So it depends. There are a couple of options, right? And I'm going to take the harder one, really. Well, I'll cover both of them. With an existing client, one or two things is going to have happened, right? Either A, you're not delivering contingently. Yeah. Or B, you're doing a great job. And I actually find doing a great job to at times be harder because the objection you're going to get when you pitched and retained is, well, you're filling everything contingently. We don't want to change anything. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. Why all of a sudden now do I need to pay you up front? I think it's really important that we demonstrate the value to them, but also explain why we're having this conversation. So to that objection, I would say, yes, I love working with you two, and I'm really proud of our partnership. We've achieved some great results. We found some great people, you're right, albeit on a contingent basis. And the reason that we're having this conversation is because my ambition is to keep finding you great people. That's what I want to do here. But the market has it, and it continues to change. Over the course of the past 6 to 12 months, competition for the best talent has become more fierce than it ever has been. In addition to that, we've got candidates who are risk averse because the economy isn't what it once was. And that means as a team, we're needing to provide more time, more resource, more rigor into every process to keep delivering the level of results that you've become used to and accustomed to. Whilst we're more than happy to do that and we want to keep doing that, the challenge that we face is every time we work together, we are completely at risk. And that means commercially, it's just not viable for us to continue putting this resource in when there's no guarantee we're going to be paid for the work. I want to reassure you, this is not an exercise to make more money. The cost overall is exactly the same. But the financial commitment from you is going to allow us to do what's needed to continue, if not improve, the level of results. Every client we've transitioned to this way of working, none of them have gone back to working in that old contingent way. And I would love to demonstrate that to you too, starting with just this first project. Yeah. So all the benefit is about them, and you don't need to marry them overnight, right? You're not going to convert the whole relationship to retained. Start with one project where it makes real sense. It might be it's more senior. It might be it's a role that you and other recruiters have been working on for a few weeks and not seeing results. Start with one project, demonstrate the process, deliver really well. That's really important to say. They'll never work with you any other way. They'll want everything to be retained. I guarantee it.
How do existing clients feel about switching from a contingent to retained? It's kind of on the same cost.
Yeah, it depends, right? Some of them I found genuinely are really happy to do it, right? Like they trust you, they like you. Some of the easiest conversations to have where you go, and you go in worried. I remember doing it, going in thinking, oh my God, what are they going to say? Like I've always worked contingently with them. I think you say it and they go, okay. You go, God, that was easy. Should have done that 6 months ago, right? Some of them, it's that straightforward. And others give you objections, like the one we've just covered, right? But actually, what I find is the objections come from the right place. They come from just a lack of understanding. What they're thinking is, well, Sarah's always done an amazing job. She fills all the roles and we pay her. Why? So it's more of an education than a sell, right?
How do you pitch retained if the company has gone to other agencies already?
Depends where. When I say where, I don't mean like which agencies. It depends where they are in the process. If they're new into the process and they've only just started working with other agencies, it'll be very, very difficult because they haven't seen it fail yet, and you often need to wait for it to fail. Yeah. One of the easiest situations I find to pitch in though is when they have gone to other agencies and the 3 months in and they've not reached a result, because I can help them understand why they haven't seen a result and why at the start they probably had a load of resumes through and that's kind of tailed off gradually over the next 6 or 8 weeks. And all of that, when I explain why that happens, makes total sense. So it just depends where you either need to get in before they go to other agencies, or sometimes it needs to be failing, they need to be in pain.
Somebody asked, what is your business model? Are you guys a recruiting firm or a training company?
Recruiters that run a training company. It sounds like a politician's answer, right? Yeah, as a business, Sarah was a recruiter as well, but me and Louise, who I suppose are the face of the actual training, are both career-long contingent recruiters who converted to retained search and have done millions of dollars in fees on a retained basis. We still do a little bit of search every now and again. We're really busy with training now, but we do the odd search. Main reason being we just feel we've got an obligation to our customers to make sure our tools are sharp, to make sure that what we're doing works in market today. So we still do a few searches for past customers and stuff like that. But if somebody asks me what I do now, I say I train recruiters.
What client-side metrics do you require to ensure success, and often how do clients fail to meet them? Or how often do clients fail to meet them?
What client-side metrics do you require to ensure success? It's not necessarily a metric as such, right? It's typically I require them to adhere to the process, right? And I can give you a few examples of that, right? The briefing meeting to start with is non-negotiable, and I need every stakeholder on that. I will not start the search until that has been conducted and it has been conducted properly. They commit to weekly steering calls. All stakeholders involved in the search need to be on the weekly steering calls. The weekly steering calls are not for me to justify the work that I've been doing or to show them how hard I'm working. The weekly steering calls are me to share insight, to share progress, and to address any issues that we identify as we're moving through the search. If they don't show up to a steering call, the search goes on hold. If the search is on hold for a period of 2 weeks, it's cancelled and a full fee will be due. So it's probably important that they show up to the steering calls. I'm not like really difficult, right? If they're on vacation or something, cool, right? But I mean, like they need to be committed to the process. Another example, I will not let them bring somebody into the process at the end. Yeah, we get to that final interview and they go, by the way, remember our board's going to sit in on the interview? No, Yeah, if they've been involved in the process throughout, that's fine. But there is huge risk associated with having somebody in that final interview that hasn't seen the ground that we've covered in week 1 to 6, that doesn't know the context of the search and what still exists in the market. So there are just certain parts of the process more than metrics that I would say I'm really, really tight on and I will not waver from. Because every time I speak to someone who has a search that's failing, they haven't stuck to these pieces of the process that keep it watertight. Are clients ready for it? It depends on the conversation you have at the front end. If you have the right conversation, yes, they are, because you've prepped them and they know what to expect. If you haven't had the conversation because you just want to get them to sign it and get it on, then yeah, you can have to have some difficult conversations down the line.
If retained search delivers superior outcomes, why do some of the best recruiters still choose contingency?
Some of them like it. No problem. And there's still a market for contingent recruiters. I think that market is going to become a little tighter, as we mentioned at the start of the presentation, right? In that as the market shifts and evolves, I think high volume, low touch recruitment is going to be not fully replaced, but is going to be easier to replace with AI and internal talent teams and cheaper resource. But contingent still has its place, absolutely. And there's some people out there that make a shit ton of money, excuse my language, from working contingently. And that's fine. Like, really well done to them. Like, I couldn't. Yeah. I didn't like contingent. I didn't do well at contingent. I don't like spending 70% of my time working for free. You know, and I found that retained delivers better outcomes, in my opinion, for everybody.
Retain can be lucrative.
I don't mind answering this question.
We don't mind answering that one.
Yeah. So, it was very, very lucrative. Why did I move into training? Because I find there is a much bigger need to train recruiters how to do this than there is in doing this. And this is also very lucrative, if I'm direct and honest. Yeah.
Maybe I need to figure out what to do with this. Some of it's more lucrative. If you guys go VIP, huge thank you. I love you guys. Are there Tara, I'm sorry, I don't know.
I think Tara's referring to you've got to turn up to the steering calls. And yes, they are. Yeah, and actually, Tara, one of the things that we include in the terms of business is what we call a frustration clause, which actually states it's quite generic, right? But if the customer acts in a way as to which we deem frustrates our ability to complete the search will be cancelled and a cancellation fee will be due.
Love that. And is it written exactly like that?
Yes.
Simple?
Yeah, I mean, very closely. I mean, it might not be word for word, but yes. Yeah, along those lines. It protects you against things like no interview feedback and slow resume feedback and all that stuff that frustrates the life out of us as recruiters, right?
How much is the cancellation fee?
Depends. Depends how nice or nasty you want to be. Some people have the cancellation fee that states we'll charge you for the work we've completed up until that point. Some people have the cancellation fee as the full fee. I've always had the cancellation fee as the full fee. I'd rather the terms be really strong and protect me and I can not negotiate down, but at the same time, right? Sometimes searches cancel and it's not that they're screwing you over, right? It's that our best salesperson that said they want to leave and now we're kind of 3 weeks into a search. Now they've told us they've changed their mind, they don't want to leave, and they're our best salesperson. Shit happens, right? It's no one's fault, right? And in that instance, I probably wouldn't charge them the full fee. I'd say, well, just pay me for the work we've completed to that point. But if the client's been ghosting me for 2 weeks and I've been working really hard and then all of a sudden they've said, sorry, we've had this internal candidate that we never really told you about, well, then I'm probably going to charge my full fee.
From a client perspective, how does the process and experience differ to contingent? Some agencies still do weekly steering calls.
Yeah, they do. One of the biggest differences I see is what's shared on those steering calls and how transparent the delivery process is. Right? It's not about here's a few resumes. I'm showing them every candidate that I've identified, every candidate that I've approached. what those candidates have said. Are there any common themes? Do they want me to collate any data as we go through the process? Would they be interested in compensation and benefits data? Do they want to know about team structures in the development team of their competitors? Like, what insights do they want me to gather that's going to help inform future hiring decisions for them as a business? Right? I'm going to take every candidate through competency-based assessment. The principle of that is their past performance is the best indicator of their future behavior. So as they get to a shortlist, they know they're speaking to people that can do the job consistently, that have done the job. And ultimately what that means is when they get to the point where they're making their hiring decision, they make that hire knowing they are hiring the very best candidate available to them in the market at that time. And that's typically what doesn't happen on a contingent basis. And that's also the reason often retained solve problems that contingent doesn't. Not that you find a different candidate, right? But actually on a retained basis at the end of the process, they hire a candidate that there's no way they would have hired at the start, because their perspective of the market, what good looks like, what actually exists, it changes throughout the search because it's transparent. And I can't remember who the question was now, who asked the question, but you're right. There are some recruiters I find that over deliver contingently. They do weekly steering calls on a contingent basis. I found that impossible to manage commercially, to make it make sense. Doing that volume of work and not getting paid for it, I think is really difficult.
Somebody's asking, maybe I'm going to read the question wrongly. So how do you go to retain for harder to fill roles and overly demanding clients when we ourselves are not confident enough on filling the vacancy?
So that's the biggest issue there is mindset, right? Most people think that when they work on a retained basis, what they're committing to is fill. Right. And I understand why I used to think that I was committing to fill too, because you're taking money off them, right? But actually what you're committing to is the process. How on earth could anybody commit to fill when you're not actually the one that makes the hiring decision? How could you commit to fill when the skill set they want, you might go to market and it doesn't exist? But how on earth can you guarantee to fill? What we guarantee is the process, that it will be thorough, rigorous, transparent. That the commitment is mutual. We work with you until we reach a result. Now, normally that result is we find the perfect candidate, and that's great. But sometimes we need to re-steer the search. We find that the candidate doesn't exist, or they do, but they don't want to move jobs right now, and that's out of our control. In those instances, we re-steer the search. We go to the very best next possible candidate, and we share all of this insight with you so that you know when you find that candidate, they are the best person available to you at that time. On occasion, sometimes they don't make a hire. You give them all of this insight and data and they say, okay, well, what we want doesn't exist. So we've decided we're going to promote internally instead. That is still a result. They only get to that decision based on your delivery process. And they still pay you for that work.
What is your number of candidates for a shortlist?
Shortlist can vary, depends on the difficulty of the mandate. Can be one. Typically, I say 3 to 5. The number I will give you is, in terms of the talent pool, you need to identify roughly 150 candidates at the start of the search. I find if you're around that 150 mark of candidates that look to be able to do the job in the right geography, when you whittle out the ones that don't respond, the ones that say no, the ones that you rule out, normally 150 will leave you with a robust shortlist.
What salary do you base the retained fee on initially?
The salary they give me, and if they give me a range, I always go on a midpoint. And yes, Whitney, you're absolutely right. The final third, the final installment trues it up. Sometimes, it's a third, and then the final fee is sometimes a little lower than a third, sometimes a little more than a third, depending on the actual salary.
You mentioned candidates being more cautious in the market. I'm feeling that pain point right now. How do you guys address this in your training?
So typically what I find is working on a retained basis allows us to take a more thorough brief and gives us context that allows us to sell the opportunity in a greater way. It also gives us time and space. It takes us out of the world where we're competing with other agencies based on speed, right? Where we've got to send that quick LinkedIn message. We've got to have a quick conversation and get the resume over. It gives us time to do things like video approach, right? Calling them at their desk at work. So firstly, we get access to more candidates, both active and passive talent pools. And the quality of that briefing meeting gives us the opportunity to really position the vacancy in a way that resonates. Other than that, right, that's just a market constraint, right? But it's one that most people are dealing with right now.
Hey, for the people dropping things in the chat, I'm going through the Q&A section first. Under what circumstances would you include employee compensation beyond the base salary to calculate your fee?
Depends. Typically, I've always billed on guaranteed first year income. So any golden handshake, any kind of sign-on bonus I'm including. I'm going to include any company car, any guaranteed bonus, right? If they're guaranteed, if it's sales and they're guaranteed bonus for the first 6 months on ramp up, I'm going to include that. Like anything that's guaranteed. The big search firms will also charge on kind of any anticipated bonus. Yeah. Any share options and stuff like that. I personally haven't done that. Yeah, I find you will get pushback from clients on that basis. And actually, there are some firms that have a mop-up invoice 12 months later. So they'll have a follow-up call with the sales director 12 months later who says, oh, Jordan, I've had a great first year. I did 180% of target and I get an extra 150 grand in bonus. And then they'll go, thank you very much. 30% of 150 grand extra bonus. Thank you very much. Where do you want to send your 45 grand to? So a real mixture. I've always done guaranteed first year compensation.
What is the process or candidate presentation process for the shortlist?
I'm a creature of habit, Ben. So I'm going to send them a zip folder. In that zip folder, each candidate's going to have their own folder, and each candidate's folder is going to be their resume with a cover sheet detailing all the main information that you'd be used to giving. It's going to include all of my interview notes. And importantly, it's going to include all of their competency-based assessment. And the competencies that we assess are mutually agreed with the client in the briefing meeting. And I'm literally going to give them the transcript. I asked them this, and they said this. And importantly, in that presentation, I am not going to give my opinion. As I see people do that, I think you should interview this guy and this lady and this chap here. Actually, all I'm doing is presenting the data to the client. And more often than not, I find when you do it that way, the customer says, yeah, I get that, Jordan, but who would you interview? And then go for broke in giving your opinion.
Somebody said, how long does it take to give them the first shortlist?
Again, depends on the search. So for me, my kind of standard go-to answer to that is the typical search takes 4 to 6 weeks. Right? Between 4 and 6 weeks to go from briefing meeting to offer. However, we can only move as fast as the candidates are willing to move. Right.
Somebody, oh, sorry, keep going.
I was going to say sometimes it's a bit quicker, sometimes it takes a bit longer.
Do you put in the commitment? Do you put the commitment for the steering calls in the terms of service agreement?
Yes.
Awesome. I think we got all the questions. So it looks like there's one more question I'll ask in a second, but I would love to see an emoji on your guys' thoughts of Sarah and Jordan's talk and sharing today.
I'm nervous.
That's full on typed out stuff. There we go. There's some emojis.
Oh, there we go. Nice. Thank
Yeah.
you, guys. I'm glad. I hope it was beneficial.
For those that have never heard Jordan or Sarah speak, are you guys happy that they shared today?
Awesome. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. Ben, thank you as always for inviting us.
I got one last question before I let you guys go. How do you manage placement guarantees?
So the wording is important, right? Firstly, there is no refund. You're not getting any money back, right? What I always commit to is for the first 3 months, if the candidate leaves in the first 3 months for performance-related reasons, not because they've had a restructure and decided actually they don't need this person, or if they can't do the job, then I will complete the search again in an attempt to find a replacement. What I do not guarantee is the replacement, because some of these searches, as you all know, are so niche, there might only be one candidate. And what I'm not doing is having this noose around my neck for the next 12 months trying to find someone that doesn't exist. So I will complete the search again in an attempt to find a replacement.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you, everybody, especially you guys on the West Coast of the United States, jumping in super early. You guys are absolutely crazy, but I know you guys are excited because 2026 is going to be absolutely your year. We got a quick 11-minute break before we jump into the next session. And the next session is going to be about creating a seven-figure profit in your business. Not just seven figures, seven-figure profit. So let's go.
Very nice.
Jordan, Sarah, thank you guys so much. Make
Thank
sure to
you,
follow them on
guys.
LinkedIn.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn, feel free. If you've got any more questions, use that QR code and book some time in my diary. I'd love to speak to you all.
All right. You guys rock.
Thanks, guys. Take
Bye,
care.
guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.